I'm Abigail Young, 32 years old, and last month my world flipped at a family dinner celebrating my father's retirement. My sister stood pointed at me, her voice dripping venom. "You're an uneducated failure who probably sells drugs to make money," she sneered. My parents didn't flinch. "Get out and don't come back." They shouted, their voices booming across the table. The room froze. Her smirk burned into me. My mother's eyes ice cold, my father's fist slamming the wood so hard the plates rattled. The silence that followed was deafening, every guest staring, waiting for me to crumble. I didn't. I gave them a calm, cold smile, said okay, and walked out my heels, clicking sharply on their hardwood floor, each step echoing my resolve. Before I tell you how their betrayal pushed me to that point, I want to know where you're hearing this story. They had no idea I'd been living a double life, one they'd never even imagined. For years, I played the part they expected, all while quietly pulling the strings that kept their world intact. Then, in a single week, everything changed. Papers were signed, numbers shifted. A letter went out that made their hands shake. And that was just the beginning. The shock on their faces when that letter landed, I can still picture their jaws dropping, their eyes wide with disbelief. I didn't stop there. I cut off every dime I'd quietly funneled their way: phone plans, streaming accounts, even their insurance they thought was family support. Then I packed my life, moved to a beachfront house in Fort Lauderdale, and left their judgment behind for good. That moment, walking away from their scorn, was when I rewrote my future. But how did years of hidden success and quiet support lead to that explosive night? Stick around, you won't believe what came before the storm. The storm that erupted at that family dinner had roots stretching back to my childhood in Fort Worth, Texas, where I grew up in a middle-class neighborhood surrounded by the hum of routine Sunday church backyard barbecues, and my parents' unwavering belief that a college degree was the only path to success. My father, Scott Young, a civil engineer who spent 30 years designing bridges, would sit at the head of our dinner table, his voice steady and commanding. "A degree means stability, benefits, a real career," he'd say, cutting into his steak. My mother, Crystal Young, who handled payroll for a local company, would nod, her smile gentle but firm. "It's what sets you apart," she'd add, passing the mashed potatoes. My younger sister, Anna Young, drank it all in, acing her classes, joining debate club, and mapping out her college applications by 16, aiming for a safe accounting job. Me, I was the oddball, chasing ideas that didn't fit their blueprint. At 14, I started making bracelets from beads and wire, selling them online for $10 each. I'd spend hours after school in my room stringing designs under a dim desk lamp, uploading grainy photos to early internet forums with my cheap digital camera. My first month brought in $200 small, but it lit a spark in me. I'd run to the kitchen waving the cash, expecting a reaction. Dad barely looked up from his newspaper. "That's cute, Abigail, but focus on school or you'll regret it," he said, his tone flat. Mom patted my arm, her voice soft. "It's a nice hobby, honey, but it won't pay the bills." Anna, sitting across the table with her algebra textbook, rolled her eyes. "Why waste time on that when you could study for SATs?" she muttered, as if my hustle was a childish game. By 15, I'd saved enough to buy a used laptop and taught myself basic coding from library books. I started fixing apps for neighbors, simple stuff like weather trackers or calendar tools, charging $20 an hour. The local tech shop charged 3 times that, so my phone kept buzzing with clients. One neighbor, a retired teacher, paid me $500 to rebuild her book club scheduling app. I stayed up until 2 a.m. debugging it, my fingers cramped from typing. When I showed my parents the money, proud of my work, Dad scoffed. "Side hustles don't build a future. Get serious." Mom chimed in, Anna's already planning her college tours. "You should think about yours." Their words cut deeper each time, like I was failing them by chasing what I loved. Anna smirked, her honor roll certificates pinned proudly on the fridge, a silent jab at my pointless projects. Family dinners became battlegrounds. Anna would gush about her latest A-plus essay or her internship at a local firm, and my parents would beam, piling her plate with extra servings. When I mentioned selling 30 bracelets in a week, or fixing an app for a cafe down the street, they'd pivot talking about the weather or needing milk. That fire ignited in me during those late-night coding sessions, pushed me to take the leap at 18, enrolling in community college to appease my parents. They saw it as the smart move, a bridge to a stable career like Anna's. I attended classes in basic business and intro coding, sitting in crowded lecture halls, but the material felt stale textbook theories from instructors who'd never launched a product. The rigid schedule clashed with my need to create, and after one semester I realized it was holding me back. I gathered my courage and told my parents I was dropping out to pursue coding full-time. Dad's face reddened, his voice booming. "You're throwing your life away." Mom wiped her eyes, pleading, "We raised you better. What will people think?" Anna, visiting from her university, crossed her arms. I knew she'd quit. Their reaction crushed me, but I packed my bags with the $2,000 I'd saved from those teen gigs and left. I rented a tiny studio apartment on the outskirts of Fort Worth, the sort with creaky floors and neighbors who argued at all hours. Rent ate $500 a month, leaving little for anything else. I survived on ramen packets and canned soup-skipping meals when cash ran low, and wore the same thrift store jeans for weeks. Mornings kicked off at 5 a.m. with black coffee from a cheap maker, then I'd dive into self-taught coding on my outdated laptop. I scoured online forums like Stack Overflow and Codecademy for free tutorials, practicing by building basic scripts, a calculator tool, a to-do list app. No mentor guided me. It was trial and error hours debugging lines that wouldn't run. My first major project was an app connecting local freelancers with clients, something I thought could fill a gap in Fort Worth's growing gig economy. I spent weeks designing the interface, learning UI basics on the fly, and coding the backend in Python. Launch day arrived and I promoted it on local Facebook groups. Initial signups came in, but the app crashed under even light traffic server errors I hadn't foreseen. Users flooded my inbox with complaints, lost my profile data, can't log in. I issued refunds, burning through my savings, $5,000 gone in a month. The failure hit hard. I spent nights staring at the ceiling, questioning if Dad was right. To keep the lights on, I turned to freelance coding jobs, advertising on Craigslist and Upwork for $30 an hour. It was inconsistent. Some weeks I'd land 3 clients making $800, others barely $300. One job was for a bakery owner wanting an online ordering system. I worked 2 weeks straight integrating payment gateways and testing cart functionality, but the client demanded endless changes, extending the deadline and straining my patience. Another gig came from a mechanic shop needing a customer database for appointments. I learned SQL overnight, building queries to track bookings, but a data loss bug almost lost me the contract. I fixed it at 3 a.m., sweating through the night. My second venture was a budgeting app for students inspired by my own tight finances. I researched by surveying forum users, identifying needs like expense tracking and alerts. The prototype looked promising with a clean dashboard and goal-setting features. I launched it on app stores with a small ad budget from freelance earnings. Downloads trickled in, but feedback revealed usability flaws, confusing navigation, slow load times. Revenue peaked at $200 the first month, not enough for rent. Competition from established apps like Mint buried mine. I iterated, adding notifications and charts, but it was too late. The app fizzled. Teaching me market research meant more than surveys. It required early testing and adaptation. The third attempt was an inventory tracker for small stores, building on lessons from the previous flops. I incorporated user feedback from the start, beta testing with a few freelance clients who gave thumbs up. Launch went smoother with decent downloads, but a sync bug caused inventory data to vanish for users. Complaints poured in, lost my stock list. I patched it over weeks, but trust eroded and revenue dropped to zero after $400 initial. That one stung the most. I'd invested hope as much as time. Lying awake in my dim apartment, I replayed the failures, each one a harsh teacher. Debug, thoroughly research markets, deeply anticipate user pain points. Throughout family calls, added salt to the wounds. Mom would ring asking if I was eating well, then slip in, "College is still an option, dear." Dad emailed job postings requiring degrees, noting, "This could be a stable start." Anna texted photos of her campus parties captioned, "Real success looks like this." I hid the struggles, replying, "Things are fine," while scraping by on freelance scraps. Each setback built my resilience. No classroom could teach that. The isolation fueled determination, pushing me to code better, think smarter. One evening, after a grueling freelance fix, an email popped in from a small business owner interested in a custom inventory app. It promised steady work, a potential turning point. But that same day, Dad called, his tone sharp. "When are you going back to school? This phase has gone on long enough." His words lit a fuse. I hung up, opened my laptop, and vowed to make this opportunity my breakthrough, no matter the cost. Dad's call questioning my phase only hardened my resolve, and I threw myself into that client email, turning it into the foundation for something bigger. The business owner, a local eco-enthusiast running a recycling center, needed a custom app to track inventory and connect with suppliers. I took the job for $400, but I saw opportunity. Over the next 2 weeks, I built the prototype, incorporating features like real-time updates and user dashboards. The client loved it, paying on time and referring me to 2 more businesses. Those gigs brought in $800, enough to cover rent and buy a better laptop. I used the momentum to pivot from freelance fixes to my own project, drawing on the lessons from my earlier flops. I conceived EcoLink as a platform linking users to green services, solar installers, recycling hubs, energy auditors in Fort Worth's emerging eco scene. Starting with a minimum viable product, I coded a basic directory with search filters using Python for the backend and JavaScript for the front end. I hosted it on a low-cost server, testing every feature to avoid the crashes that sank my previous apps. Launch was low-key posts on local Facebook groups and environmental forums. Downloads started slow, 10 the first week, 20 the next, but users liked the simplicity. I iterated quickly, adding ratings and maps based on feedback from those early adopters. The breakthrough hit when a popular environmental blogger discovered it through a forum thread. She reviewed EcoLink on her site, calling it a must-have for sustainable living in Texas. Her post exploded in eco communities, driving thousands of downloads overnight. Revenue surged from premium listings, businesses paying to be featured hitting $10,000 in the first month. I couldn't believe it. For the first time, my bank account had a buffer. I celebrated alone with a takeout pizza, but the high was short-lived. I knew scaling was next. With the cash flow, I hired my first contractor, a fellow coder from an online forum, to help with back-end upgrades. We expanded EcoLink to include user profiles and recommendation algorithms, making it more than a directory, a community hub. Downloads climbed to 10,000, and revenue doubled the next month. I incorporated the company, renting a small office space in a co-working building downtown Fort Worth. By year 2, I had 5 full-time employees, 2 developers, a marketer, and support staff. We added partnerships with local green businesses, taking a commission on referrals. The app went statewide, connecting users in Dallas and Austin. As growth accelerated, challenges piled up. A server overload during a viral campaign forced me to work 48 hours straight, migrating to a cloud service while answering user emails. We lost some partnerships when a competitor undercut our rates, so I drove to meetings personally, negotiating better terms and strengthening ties. Cash flow issues hit when expansion outpaced income. I went without salary for 2 months, negotiating extended payments with vendors. These hurdles taught me financial discipline. No college course could match that hands-on grind. By year 3, EcoLink had 45 employees with offices in a converted warehouse. We hit 1 million downloads and revenue crossed the 7-figure mark. I became the executive turning down acquisition offers from bigger tech firms. To keep control, I wanted to steer the vision toward national expansion. Features like AI-driven sustainability tips and integration with smart home devices kept users engaged. A profile in a business magazine highlighted our impact bringing investor interest, but I stayed independent. Through it all, I kept my success hidden from my family. They'd ask about my job, and I'd say, "Business is okay," downplaying the scale to avoid their skepticism. Calls home were brief. Mom would update me on Anna's promotions, Dad on his projects, but they never asked details about mine. It hurt, but I told myself it was better than their judgment. One evening after closing a major partnership, I overheard Mom on the phone with a neighbor. "Abigail's doing some internet thing, lucky for her, but it's not a real career." Her words reignited the old pain, making me question if anything would change their view. Mom's overheard comment about my internet thing being luck-stung like a fresh cut, but it also ignited a quiet determination to help them in ways they couldn't ignore, even if anonymously. As EcoLink grew, generating steady revenue, I started funneling money back to my family without them knowing. It began with Mom's cancer diagnosis in 2017, right as the app hit its first major milestone. Her breast cancer treatments racked up bills not covered by insurance, $80,000 for chemo and surgery. I set up an anonymous payment through a third-party service, making it look like an insurance adjustment. Mom called me one day relieved. The hospital said it's covered, some mix-up fixed itself. I mumbled congratulations, biting my tongue to keep the secret. Next came Anna's wedding in 2019. She and her fiancé Brian were short on funds for the venue, and honeymoon totaling $60,000. I wired the money via a family friend account, disguising it as a gift from a distant relative. Anna texted me photos of the dress, gushing about how everything fell into place. I replied with a thumbs-up emoji, but inside it twisted my contribution erased, credited to luck or family magic. Then in 2021, Dad's house repairs after a storm damaged the roof and foundation, costing $30,000. I paid the contractor directly, posing as a grant from a local program. Dad bragged to neighbors about good insurance, never suspecting the source. I used separate bank accounts for these transfers, routing them through apps like PayPal and Venmo to stay hidden. Each time I'd check the statement, seeing the money vanish into their lives. Mom's recovery, Anna's happy day, Dad's fixed home. It felt good at first, a way to repay their raising me, but the secrecy weighed heavy. Why hide? Because their dismissal of my work made me fear they'd reject the help if they knew it came from my lucky path. The inner conflict grew. I craved their approval, yet dreaded their judgment. The cracks showed in small ways. During a rare family call, Mom mentioned Anna's new car bought with savings from her steady job. I knew I'd covered the down payment, but said nothing. Dad talked about his retirement fund, holding strong. Unaware, I'd topped it up. Anna posted on social media about her promotion, captioning, "Hard work pays off thanks to family support." That one stung her. Family support was my silent checks, but she paraded it as her own merit. I scrolled through their profiles, noticing how family photos from holidays never included me anymore, or if they did, the captions skipped my name. One evening in 2022, after a long day at the office, I overheard Anna on a video call with her friends while visiting home for a weekend. Abigail got lucky with some app thing, she's still uneducated though." She laughed. Her words echoed, confirming what I'd feared. They saw my success as a fluke, not skill. It hurt more than the failures. I'd built a company from nothing, yet to them, I was the dropout sister. The pain fueled a cycle. I helped more to prove my worth, but the secrecy deepened the divide. By 2023, the total support hit $170,000, all anonymous. Mom's follow-up scans, Anna's home down payment extension, Dad's car repair after a fender bender, I handled it all. Each transfer was a mix of love and resentment, a silent bid for recognition that never came. Their casual mentions, "things worked out," erased my role, crediting family effort or fate. On social media, Anna's posts about our family's resilience made my stomach twist. Resilience built on my money, but they claimed it as their own. The breaking point came when I saw Anna's post after her promotion party. Gia Jin tu lo het, thanks to everyone's hard work. The photo showed them toasting, no mention of me. That night, I sat in my apartment staring at the screen, the pain turning to resolve. Their erasure wasn't just oversight, it was denial. I decided the retirement dinner for Dad would be the moment to reveal everything, to force them to see me. The secrecy had to end, even if it meant confronting the rift head-on. That post from Anna crediting family effort for everything I'd silently funded was the final push. I couldn't keep hiding my truth. My father's retirement dinner in 2024 was my chance to lay it all bare, not to boast, but to force them to see me as more than the dropout they dismissed. I decided to present a gift, a fully funded retirement account, $100,000 set up through my company's financial advisor. It wasn't just money, it was proof of my success, a concrete way to show I'd built something real. But more than that, I wanted them to know about the years of support I'd given: the $80,000 for Mom's cancer treatments, the $60,000 for Anna's wedding and car, the $30,000 for Dad's house repairs. This wasn't about shaming them. It was about claiming my place in the family. I spent weeks preparing a speech, something I'd never done before. Sitting at my desk in Fort Worth, I wrote and rewrote, tracing my journey from those teenage bracelet sales to coding apps in my cramped apartment, from failures to EcoLink's seven-figure revenue. I kept it simple, no jargon, just the truth. How I'd worked 18-hour days, taught myself Python, survived on ramen, and built a company that employed 45 people. The speech wasn't long, maybe 5 minutes, but every word carried weight. I practiced in front of my bathroom mirror, timing myself, adjusting my tone to stay calm but firm. I did this for me, but also for us, I'd say, imagining their faces. I've been supporting you not out of pity, but love. My hands shook as I rehearsed, picturing Dad's skeptical frown, Mom's hesitant nod, Anna's eye roll. The documents were my backup, hard evidence they couldn't dismiss. I gathered bank statements, receipts, and transfer confirmations from the anonymous accounts I'd used. One folder held the hospital payment records for Mom's chemo, showing $80,000 cleared in 2017. Another had the wedding venue and honeymoon invoices for Anna, $60,000 wired in 2019. A third showed the contractor payments for Dad's roof and foundation, $30,000 in 2021. I organized them in a sleek binder, each page tabbed and dated, ready to hand over if they questioned me. Checking the papers felt like arming myself for battle. I wasn't just walking into a dinner, I was walking into a reckoning. The night before the dinner, I barely slept. I stood in my apartment, pacing, rereading the speech on my laptop. Doubt crept in. Would they even listen? Dad's voice echoed in my head. Focus on school, or you'll regret it. Anna's smug, Abigail got lucky, stung anew. What if they laughed? What if they turned it against me? I pushed the thoughts aside, focusing on the binder, the speech, the gift. This was my last try to be accepted as an equal, to bridge that canyon between us. I ironed my dress, a simple navy one I'd worn to client meetings, and packed the binder and gift paperwork in my purse. My heart raced as I visualized the moment, setting the binder on the table, speaking my truth, watching their faces shift from doubt to realization. The morning of the dinner, I drove to a coffee shop to clear my head. Sitting with a latte, I ran through the speech one last time, whispering the lines under my breath. A barista noticed, smiling. "Big presentation today?" she asked. I nodded, not explaining it felt too personal. Back home, I checked the binder again, ensuring every receipt was in place. The retirement account paperwork was crisp, signed by the advisor, a tangible symbol of my success. I told myself this wasn't about proving them wrong, it was about proving me right. But deep down, I wanted their respect, maybe even their pride. As the afternoon sun dipped, I got ready, my hands steadying as I applied mascara. I looked in the mirror, no longer the unsure teen hiding coding books. I was a woman who'd built a tech empire, who'd carried her family without credit. The speech, the gift, the documents, they were my stand. Driving to my parents' house, my knuckles white on the steering wheel, my pulse thundered. The familiar street appeared lined with the same oak trees from my childhood. Their house came into view, lights warm through the windows, cars already parked, Anna and her husband, neighbors, family, friends. I pulled into the driveway, took a deep breath, and grabbed my purse. This dinner would either change everything or break it apart forever. Stepping through my parents' front door, the familiar smell of pot roast hit me, but the warmth of childhood memories was gone. The dining room buzzed with chatter. Neighbors, family, friends, Anna and her husband, Brian Edwards, all gathered around the table set with Mom's good china. Dad sat at the head, smiling at compliments about his retirement, Mom bustling with serving dishes. Anna, in a crisp blazer, recounted her latest promotion, basking in their nods. I took my seat, the binder and gift envelope heavy in my purse, my pulse still racing from the drive. No one asked about my life, not a single question about my work. The conversation danced around local gossip, Brian's new car, Anna's office achievements. I waited, picking at my plate, the speech I'd practiced burning in my mind. After dessert, as coffee cups clinked, I saw my opening. I stood, hands steady despite my racing heart. Dad, Mom, Anna, everyone, I have something to share, I said, voice clear. All eyes turned, some curious, some indifferent. I started my speech, keeping it tight. I built a tech company, EcoLink, from nothing. It's valued at millions, and I'm earning a 7-figure salary. No degree, just hard work, 18-hour days, years of learning code, surviving failures. I paused, scanning their faces. Dad's brow furrowed. Mom blinked. Anna leaned back, arms crossed. And I've been supporting this family? I continued, pulling out the binder. $80,000 for Mom's cancer treatments in 2017, $60,000 for Anna's wedding and car in 2019, $30,000 for Dad's house repairs in 2021. I paid it all quietly, because I love you. The room went still, forks frozen midair. I opened the binder, sliding it toward Dad, receipts and bank transfers neatly tabbed. This is the proof, I said, placing the retirement account envelope beside it. And this is for you, Dad, a fully funded account, $100,000. I expected shock, maybe gratitude. Instead, Anna stood, her face twisted. You're an uneducated failure, she spat. Stop lying. You probably sell drugs to make that money. Her words sliced through the silence, guests gasping. Dad didn't look at the binder. He grabbed it, tearing pages in half, his voice booming. We're ashamed to call you our daughter. You think throwing money around makes you better than us? Mom joined in, her tone sharp. We never asked for your charity. Abigail? I stood frozen, the binder's ripped pages fluttering to the floor. Brian smirked, leaning back. Neighbors stared, some whispering. Anna pointed at the door. Get out and don't come back. Dad echoed, red-faced. Out now. Mom's eyes were cold. No trace of defense. The weight of their words hit like a tidal wave, not just rejection, but erasure of everything I'd done. I didn't argue or plead. Something snapped inside, a clarity cutting through the hurt. I gave them a cold, calculated smile, one I'd never used before. I understand perfectly now, I said, my voice steady, almost icy. I grabbed my purse, the torn binder, the untouched envelope, and walked out. My heels clicked on the hardwood, each step a release. The door slammed behind me, their shouts fading. Outside, the night air was cool, but my blood burned. I slid into my car, hands trembling on the steering wheel, not from sadness, but from a new resolve. They hadn't just dismissed my success, they'd spat on it, torn it apart, called me a criminal. The love I'd poured into those payments, the years of secrecy to spare their pride, meant nothing. I pulled out my phone, scrolling to my lawyer's number, a contact I'd never thought I'd need for family. As I drove to the hotel streetlights blurring past, I dialed. "I need you to look into some property records," I said, voice calm but firm. "The house my parents rent, I want to buy it fast." He asked why. I didn't explain the dinner, the torn papers, the shame they'd thrown at me. I just said, it's time to set things right. Revenge wasn't a choice anymore. It was a necessity. Dialing my lawyer on that drive home from the dinner with their shouts still ringing in my ears sealed the plan. I wasn't turning back. "Look into the rental property my parents live in," I said, voice steady despite the adrenaline. He pulled records overnight confirming the house was for sale by the owner, a standard Texas listing at market value. I wired the funds from my company account the next day, closing the deal in cash for speed. No loans, no delays. 1 week after the dinner, the title was mine. I didn't confront them directly. I sent a legal notice through the lawyer's office on company letterhead with EcoLink's logo bold at the top. It detailed the new ownership doubled the rent to match current Fort Worth rates, up from $1,500 to $3,000 monthly, and demanded immediate payment for back utilities I'd covered anonymously over the years, totaling $20,000. The notice gave them 30 days to pay or vacate, all within Texas tenant laws. The shockwave hit fast. Mom called the next day, her voice trembling. "What's this letter?" "The rent's doubled. How can we afford that?" I kept it professional. "It's business. The property's under new management." She pressed, but I hung up. Anna texted furiously, "This is low even for you." I didn't reply. Dad emailed accusing me of playing games with family. I forwarded it to the lawyer without a word. To expose the scale, I posted on LinkedIn about toxic family dynamics, anonymous but obvious to anyone who knew us. When success is dismissed as luck and support is erased, boundaries become essential. I wrote linking to an article on entrepreneur mental health. It got hundreds of likes with comments from colleagues sharing similar stories. The post didn't name them, but the timing spoke volumes. I cut off all ongoing support that same week. Their phone plans, billed to my credit card under Family Share, got canceled. Texts from Anna complaining about lost service went unanswered. The streaming accounts I'd set up for their TV, Netflix, Hulu expired without renewal. Even the insurance riders I'd added to my policy for Mom's follow-ups were dropped with a notice sent via email. It was clean, legal, and final. No more invisible safety net. The total I'd spent over the years, $170,000, ended there. Their reactions poured in through voicemails I deleted unheard, but I stood firm. This wasn't revenge for revenge's sake. It was reclaiming my power after years of their denial. With the notice sent, I sent a final letter, handwritten, to cut ties completely. "I've loved and supported this family, but your rejection at the dinner showed me my place." I wrote, "The money stops. The contact stops. I wish you well, but from afar." I mailed it, certified no return address. Then I packed my essentials, laptop, clothes, a few books, and arranged for movers to handle the rest. Fort Lauderdale called, a beachfront house I'd eyed for months, bought for $1,500,000 with EcoLink profits. The closing was quick, and I drove down the Texas skyline, fading in my rearview. In Fort Lauderdale, the salt air hit me as I unlocked the door to my new home, a 2-story modern build with ocean views. I converted the spare room into an office, setting up dual monitors for remote EcoLink work. The first days were raw therapy sessions with Dr. Andrea Torres, a local specialist in family trauma, helped unpack the dinner's fallout. "Their words reflect their insecurities, not your worth," she said in our virtual calls. I journaled the patterns, Dad's lectures, Mom's passive nods, Anna's taunts, all rooted in their fear of my unconventional path. Sessions shifted from pain to processing, recognizing how their undervaluing had driven my secrecy. Routine became my anchor. Mornings started with beach walks, waves lapping at my feet, clearing my head before team meetings. I adopted a cat, Misty, a gray rescue with green eyes who curled up on my lap during calls. Her purring was a simple comfort, no strings attached. I joined a local networking group for women entrepreneurs, meeting Brianne Collins, who ran a nearby coffee shop. "You're inspiring," she said over our first lunch, sharing her own startup story. Our weekly meetups, dinners at seaside spots talking business and life, built a chosen family free from judgment. Some relatives reached out after the LinkedIn post went viral in our circles. An aunt called apologizing for staying silent. We saw what they did, it wasn't right. I forgave selective only those genuine like her who acknowledged the hurt. Others, like a cousin echoing dad's views, got blocked. The boundaries felt right, even if painful. I don't regret them, but healing from family rejection takes time. Therapy sessions remind me it's a process, not a switch. As the dust settled, I reflected on the journey. Their betrayal at the dinner wasn't the end, it was the start of my real freedom. Self-respect matters more than toxic relationships. If your family dismisses your efforts or credits your support to luck, set boundaries early. Recognize the signs, erased contributions, constant comparison, rejection of your path. Live your passion, build a chosen family that values you. That's the value. Don't wait for approval that may never come.